Hello, hi everybody there. This is the third session of the workshop Public Space and People. So we are over our half of the workshop, and today we're going to have a look, after yesterday's open session, we're going to have a look to participation. We're going to keep on talking about participation. We're going to talk about the different kinds of participation, or different variables that we should look at when we look at participation. And also we would compare, we would have a look to the decision-making process about public spaces in Hamar. So we would have both an open, sort of theoretical debate or some theoretical aspects of participation, and also a more narrowing down to the case of Hamar, and we will have a look to what's exactly going on. We would have the municipal architect of Hamar in what's his name? Geir, which is the municipal architect of Hamar in. And it's collaborating with us. So I just had a very nice conversation after some, I would say, technical problems, but we finally connected, and we really discussed about the participation elements and issues of Hamar. So he would be in the chat, and of course open to answer any questions. So we're having also some technical problems today with our PowerPoint, but that's not a problem because I can face this situation with our PowerPoint. I'm sort of a postmodern person, and I'm actually getting rid of PowerPoint in my lectures in the university because people get too obsessed with it, and then they just look at it as if kids look at cartoons. So at the end of the day, nobody listens to what one's speaking, or nobody even thinks about intervening, because it's the PowerPoint who rules. Despite that, I'll show you one later, but now for the moment I'm going to just talk a little bit on the different variables that we should look at when we talk about participation, when we want to analyze, when we want to understand, when we want to develop participation. So first of all, we should look at, and in the line of the post I wrote yesterday, about whether the participatory process we're dealing with, it's bottom up or top down. I think we have already talked about these before, but basically top down is what we're going through now in Hamar, which is the public administration, public institutions, in this case the city of Hamar, the commune, has started a process of urban renewal in which participation, it's a key part of it. It's actually I would say it's the engine, and it's the backbone of the whole renovation of the most important public space in the city. So it is definitely top down, with a lot of degrees of I would say of liberty in terms of what would be what would be proposed in the different forums that we are preparing. One of them is this one, would be eventually implemented. So it is a quite interesting feature of this process, and not very, very common, I have to say. So we're talking about top-down participation. This is generally the scenarios we find. So we have to think whether the participation proposed, the mechanisms of participation proposed by the public administration are relevant or refer to a specific process like this. I mean, this renovation of renewal of Stortorget Square is not happening every time, so it's just in a specific issue, it's in a specific policy or a specific program. If we call it properly, it is a program. So attached to this program, which is associated to land use, to planning, there are some mechanisms of participation. This is kind of exceptional thing. Also, we have to look at whether there are permanent devices of participation at the municipal level, not only with very exceptional interventions like the one we're talking about. So also we can find that in Hama there are a number of participation mechanisms that attempt to make people participate in different aspects of urban policy, not only in land planning, not only in physical interventions, the physical skeleton or the physical fabric of the city, but also in different policy areas. We would see that in a minute. So we're talking about top-down participation. We're talking whether this participation is binding or not binding. So it's the outcomes of the participation, what it is decided in the participatory process should be developed, implemented, or should be taken as a valid opinion and be ready to be incorporated if it's pertinent, if it's relevant to the given process. So this is actually the case. And it is a very blurry whether to define whether a process is binding or not. Most of the participatory processes are either informative. This is the city or the public administration is giving information. It's providing information about different programs or policies. That would be the sort of the weakest side, the less participative side, which is just informing and receiving information. The citizen, it's a passive participant because it's just receiving information, and then you can go through different participatory artifacts, which range from participating in public hearings, debates, proposing alternatives to what the technicians, the architects, or the planners are suggesting, proposing alternatives or discussing them or discussing with experts. So this ranges into more and more participative thing. And finally, we have, and this would be developed next week more thoroughly. Finally, we have these participative action research in which we have some forms of direct participation. This is people develop a whole process. It's not just a moment. It's not just a meeting or a given situation is defined through consensus, and it is consensuated. Is agreed upon. So you agreed first on the necessities, on the problems. Then how could you tackle them? What would be the outcomes, etc. Okay. So we have this range, very long range of tools of participation that we would look at in the next section, because now I want to concentrate more on the on the variables that we should look at when talking about participation.
If you want to switch to the...
Thank you. Okay, so we've been talking about top-down, top-down, binding or not binding. I'm saying that most processes are not strictly binding, but it's a bit blurry. So one of the things I was asking Guy was, okay, how much it is, if it is not necessarily binding, what is the impact? Because of course, participation is a very political thing, and it is part of a policy process, but also it takes a big relevant role in political life of a city or in the political life of a city. So we have to be very careful to see whether how binding, how influential the outcomes of participation might be. It might not be not influential at all, not binding at all, formally, I mean by law. So okay, we listen to what they say, what citizens say, but we are not necessarily obliged to do it. despite this, sometimes, of course, the pressure, the role that different actors might have, political times, political terms, political conflict, but also model the impact of even not binding outcomes of a participatory process. So some actors, some stakeholders are stronger than others and can make them voice sound louder, or yes, through what we call, and we go to a third point of our axis of a triangle, what we call it through informal participation. So what is the difference between formal and informal participation? Well, formal participation is that which is established and defined, whose rules are defined and they are given the form of mechanisms, of tools, or tools of participation. So as we will see in a few minutes, in Hamar there are formal means of participation. There are ways in which citizens can express or can influence the decision-making process all the time. Okay, hi, welcome, Geir. Thank you for coming again. So we have formal means of participation, but we also have informal means of participation, which might consist just in the very classical one would be, taking the phone and calling, a politician, a councillor, or the mayor, or something like, look, I'm representing this lobby or this pressure group or these stakeholders, or I'm representing myself as an individual resident, and I'm going to let you know that there is this problem, or that we're not happy with this decision, or we're lacking some services here, or the service provision is deficient, etc., etc. That would be more informal participation. It's not happening through the classical standardized procedures, the tools or the mechanisms of participation, which is going to a meeting or going to a public hearing or a council session in which kind of personal network basis, in which you are a grassroots leader or something and you want to achieve something for your community, for your interest group, and therefore you might call directly because you know that guy, because you have some capacity of pressure, etc., etc., etc. Okay, when we talk about start the process, they claim for something, they protest for something, they demand something through different means, which might be informal, obviously, because it's bottom up and it's coming from a place in which the institutional realm is not present. So it might be callings, it might be mobilizations of different sorts, it might be confrontation with other groups or with the public administration, and of course sometimes these bottom-up informal forms of participation keep on going like that. And I think a very, very interesting, maybe a bit big for our local or even micro-local scale, but a very interesting one would be the 15M movement, the indignated movement, which you might be familiar with, because it shattered in different cities, in the streets of different cities, including Manhattan, which is probably the most exotic thing to see, a demonstration of these kind of people in front of Wall Street. And I fully feel very impressed with these events. So this would be a good example of informal participation, a bottom-up informal participation process. And this happens also at any scale. It might happen at a scale of a group of people claiming for the renovation of an empty little plot in the city center, and that might be, and they may be occupying, squatting into the empty plot and planting some trees and doing some guerrilla gardening. This is informal participation, but it might turn into formal, because following our case, we might find that this initiative of occupying an empty plot is accepted by the city, by the municipality, and they give a permission to do that, and even some resources. So that would become somehow formal participation, and they might establish even a process through which empty plot can be claimed by civil society. That would become a formal procedure of participation. So I hope this is clear now, the difference between formal and informal participation. Formal is always top-down, or top-down is always formal. Bottom-up generally starts as informal and might end as formal participation if it's suited with the tools and mechanisms required, or if it is introduced in the circuit of formal participation through these mechanisms and instruments. So this is in relation to when the three groups of variables, these three binary variables that I want to put on the table: top down, bottom up, formal, informal, binding and not binding. There would be a fourth category which I didn't want to write here because I think it's more transversal, and it's the way participation is sorted out or is tackled. And it has a lot to do with formal and informal. It is tackled through confrontation. How participation / conflict is tackled. Is it tackled through confrontation or through agreement and consent? Okay, this would be also a very important way of looking at things. In some environments, there's a culture of confrontation, so participation is understood as confrontation with public administration, and it works. And public administration understands this very well because it also might even foster it. So it is through confrontation that things are resolved. In other places, conflict is resolved through consensus, through the classical "let's sit and talk." And I think this is decisive. To understand this, it's decisive. It's critical to know a bit about the political cultures of that environment, the history of that environment, the structure of the public administration of that environment, and somehow too we could say, but of course this is a bit more dodgy variable, the color of the municipality, whether it is more consensual or more confrontational. If the color, the party ruling a given administration is blue, this is right wing for us, Spanish, or red, left wing. But this is getting more and more blurry, and sometimes it just doesn't explain by itself whether participation is more easy or more efficient in one or other side. Going back to our initial item of the public space in the city centers and participation, and thinking about the idea of explaining how participation takes place in the decision-making process, I want just to highlight some few points, which would be how public space is restrictively regulated. So this adds some problems, so some questions, at least some big questions to participation in public space. Should public space be reformed, designed, transformed, thought even through participatory means? Because a lot of the variables that are some of the elements that are introduced in public spaces when they are designed, it's a very restrictive regulation of public space in terms of security, of use, on consumption of that public space, etc. So is it good that it is some decisions about public spaces are set up by participation? When I say is it good, I'm thinking about do public administration find interesting, efficient and worthwhile to introduce participation in certain decision environments such as public space? We'll have a look to that later. And public spaces generally have a technical, non-integrative design. They're not participative, non-transversal, non-multidimensional. So in this sense, Hamar, it's a quite interesting input in terms of participation and public space, because it's really breaking a lot of patterns that you find in a lot of countries around public spaces and participation. Participation, a bit linking with this idea of restrictive regulation. Participation, it's also very important because a lot of the uses that are given to public space are more the non-desired of the forbidden. So if public space are thinking more in what you cannot do there, or what it is forbidden to be done there. This is what motivates, or what sort of justifies a lot of the design of public spaces, rather than what can you do or what do you want to do. And this is basically the questions we're posing in Hamar. Like, okay, what do you want to do with this space? How do you want it to look like? What kind of things do you want to happen in this space? So in this sense, this project is very, very open and very free and very stimulating as a participatory project, because generally it doesn't contemplate or regard so much a set of structural restrictions that other public spaces would just experience by definition. Finally, I would also like to go back to this idea, this summary in which public spaces are more thought about when they design in terms of regulation, surveillance, clean, and privatization. And we are thinking in other variables which are not necessarily exclusive or substituting these ones, which to some extent sometimes need to be present, but we're talking about other kind of things, and participation would enhance other uses and other variables defining the uses of public space. Okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to shift to the camera. So now we're going to see for a while, we're going to see the different ways in which public space might be how public space might be designed. What is the decision-making process around public space, and whether it is participative or not. So I will compare a standard, not very participative public space design with a decision-making process with another one which initially it is not, but it has been changed, which is the case of Hamar. So what we have here is the thank you. What we have here is the decision-making in Madrid. The public space decision making in Madrid, and different colors. We have political process, technical process, and participative process. So what we have is a technical process which starts the idea, which is a pre-design of the. Let's say we trying to build a little park in a square or a playground in a square. So someone pre-designs it. Someone suggests the needs of doing it. And how is the proposal of that public space coming? Where is this coming from? It's coming from, It's coming from either a proposal through the electoral program, so it is contained in the electoral program that we are going to make a square here, or it is proposed by the residents, maybe by informal participation, is calling and putting some pressure on someone, or asking, or transmitting the needs of a particular group. Then it can be also suggested by the neighborhood, by the district council, by the authorities, the local authorities that might find it necessary. or it can even be as an outcome of the Agenda 21 process, which is itself it is a participatory process, and despite it's not always very much taken in account, if it's well done, if that agenda 21 is well designed and well implemented, and it is a very efficient. It should be a very efficient participatory process. So we have already looked at the beginning, so where things started, how it is modeled and given a shape, and where does it come from. Sometimes this process is political, sometimes it's participative. It depends a bit on each case. Then we have the district councillor, which would approve or would say something about the idea of the project in general, and it is to his decision that this goes through the district council, which is also another participatory mechanism. In the district council, the politically elected members of the district council would meet, but also there would be a number of representatives of different stakeholders, etc., which are not elected, but they are there, and they can, in a specific tool of participation, they can meet and discuss things. But if these would go through this sort of participative environment only after a political decision of the district councillor. Okay, so we have politics taking place first in the initiation of the process, and secondly, when this process should be discussed by the citizens or not. In this particular case, this mechanism of participation, which is the district council, is not binding at all. It's just the politicians, in this case the district councillor, would listen to what the residents have to say, and eventually some other people from other departments involved in the specific public space would come to listen to. Then the budget is approved. There's like a bid or a call for application, so who wants to do it, and then there's this implementation process going on. There's obviously there's no evaluation of results at all, or there's no screening whether the outcome of that competition, that call for proposals, has been what the different proposals were and which were the most interesting, etc. So after the implementation, there's neither any evaluation or any monitorization of the results, of whether they work or not, whether they have been properly done, whether they are efficient, etc. Which in the case of public spaces, it's a pity, because public spaces, as you know, work very well with participation, because they are really very dynamic. You do a public space and you participate in the design of a public space, and maybe it works very well for 5 or 6 years, but after that there's a generational change, or there's some social demographic changes in the city or in the neighborhood, and this ideal environment, which has been designed among everyone, might really change and not be so efficient anymore, and you need to rethink it. So they're very, very dynamic and lively objects, public spaces. So they really need to be participated and to be designed in a coherent, consensual way, or not at all, just being pre-designed, designed, approved by technical bodies and implemented by technical bodies, which is at the end of the day what happened in most of the cases of the city of Madrid and in many other cities, because above all, participation, as I was suggesting yesterday in the post, it is about time, and it's about time. I was saying in a very apparently successful metaphor that participation is like love, because it's never perfect, and it certainly is not, because it's about time. It's not only about people engaging in and sharing and thinking together or confronting or whatever, but it's about the time people have to spend in participating, the time the public administrations, remember that time is money, have to spend in the processes, but also, and probably much more important than that the bureaucratic administrative realm of participation in terms of time is the fact that the participation needs to be needs its time to breed. It needs to be planted, watered, nurtured, and it needs to have results in a reasonable, decent time. So often, process of participation and the outcomes of those processes are neglected or not put in value because they go beyond the 4-year period, and the 4-year period is something which is critical for any politician because they know that they should inaugurate, they should operate, they should do things in that particular period. And a lot of these politicians are aware that some processes need more time, but there's this kind of vicious circle in which, okay, I want to develop this policy, but if I'm not have results soon enough, my chances of being re-elected would diminish, and therefore this project would never come to an end, and it would fail, it would vanish or disappear because the other party coming would disregard it or not do it exactly the same, etc., etc. So time is a very important variable in this, and that might explain parts of this decision-making process. But let's go very quickly to the decision process in. Thank you. The decision process in Hamar. This is thank again to Guide. This is something I asked him to do, which is a little graphic with the tree of the decision making or the organization of the Stortorget project, which I think is very interesting to just have a look to. So we have a very strong and I would say sophisticated technical realm, which would be basically chief executive manager, technical departments, and the project management. This technical realm would develop the projects, would suggest the projects, the needs of doing something, and here this is the example of very clearly defined, very clearly explained the case of Stortorget Square, in which both the culture house and the square, the EU is Ecosistema Urbano, which means the square. Both the culture house and the square are under the same project management, although it doesn't seem to be a lot of coordination between both projects. It's not that they don't want to coordinate, but it is that it is not established that they should coordinate, which these add some complexity to the whole situation. And I'm sure the contacts would be more and more intense, and there would be definitely a dialogue between, and dialogue is a very architectural concept, isn't it? Like the dialogue that buildings establish or things like that. So, but there would be a dialogue between the square and the culture house, and there would be a dialogue between the designers of both facilities, and there would be definitely a dialogue in terms of users of both spaces. And what is interesting about this decision or this organization or this organigram is that I insist there is a lot of the technical structures is quite important. Politicians are informed by the project manager in technical, with technical contents and performance reports, etc. But also they are informed by the presentations, the material that is generated by the teams developing the very projects of the culture house and the square. So these presentations are basically a way of putting in touch the last stage of the the designing process with the head of the political/policy process, which is quite interesting. Having said that, it is very important to assume that the culture house in Hamar, it's a very big strategic project for the city because it plans to to give relevance to the city, to attract companies of dance, of music, concerts, to make of Hamar an important place for arts and for performance. So it is a very strategic project for the city. In the case of Ecosistema Urbano of the square, it is very interesting to assess how participation has become the outcome of a window of opportunities, which was the competition. So this team here, these people I'm surrounded by, decided, okay, let's go for this project and let's make something very daring and very radical, which would be to make of the art piece, which is expected to be in the square, let's make a participatory project. That would be the art piece, and therefore it has become the high expectations we all have, like you, me, us, on the participatory process. It is due to a window of opportunities. This doesn't mean, of course, that there would be not a very important element, a path dependence element, which is this project has been unanimously selected by or voted or backed by all political parties in Hamar, because there is a solid tradition of openness and participation in Hamar. So incorporating new forms of participation has been apparently tempting and has generated a wide consensus between the different stakeholders, the different political parties, political groups, etc. Okay, so I think this is something very important to take in account, which we were mentioning the first day, which is the administrative or the administrative or institutional architecture, the institutional background. What are the rules of the game? How the city has been dealing with this particular issue, in this case participation, in the last 20-30 years. And I think this is very important to look at, to take in account. I think this is a very relevant thing to think about. And we can call it maybe also a style of policy style or even political style, which is, okay, we have an attitude to participation. We like it and we think it's important for a city. And despite the party, and this is what Guy was telling to me, it's not a party issue. It's not that left wing or right wing rejects participation or support participation blindly. He was telling me it's more a personal option, and it's definitely in line and in tuned on with the personality of the municipality, with the and this is more into city branding thing, the DNA of the city. That's probably a good slogan for the project. So what would be the main tools of participation of what is the main tool of participation about Hamar? But let me just drop a minute to the chat, because there seems to be a lot of activity going on, and I feel a bit lonely here talking about all these bureaucratic proceedings, and the action is going in the chat. So let me just give in some feedback on what's going on. Okay, this is something I've been talking about, how the other places, other public squares work in the city. There is another, I was talking with Moki Ryan, which is one of the local community activators, and we really had an amazing chat, which I expect to follow in a while to go on. And we're talking about the other square, how it has been activated, and the fact that Stortorget is not a very central space. It's not a very public even space. It's just a parking lot. It's a big place which is in the somehow surroundings of the city. Despite this is the very center of the city, it has been configured, and symbolically it has become the fringes of the city, because there is no access to the sea, to the water, There's the tracks. So the city, despite it has this shape of arch looking to the harbor, it is in reality it's self-contained. It's looking to itself. So I think it's a very important to look at other elements. Okay, so a lot of feedback on what Stort2Get and Ostertog is about, the two squares, and probably how they're competing. So there's a lot of jargon of architects stuff in terms of planning and connecting our online activities with an on-site view. So I will go back to my little bureaucratic realm, which I know is not so exciting as discussing maps, but sorry to say this, but this is what definitely shapes the city. It's not just the plans, but it's who decides what's going to go into the plans. And in this decision of what is going to go into the plans, we need to be very, very aware of what are the tools, what is the rules of the games for participation. So some things can go into the plans and can be introduced into planning on what things cannot, and how this is taking place. So I was very gladly surprised with the elements that are familiar to citizens, or should be familiar to citizens in Hamar in terms of participation. So there is this element which is called, this is the revision of plans, and I want to stop a minute in these. Strategic plans for the city had a period of life of 10 years, but every 4 years they are revised. Their performance it's revised, and it's discussed with residents through different means of participation, informative, debates, etc., access to policymakers, etc. And when we talk about plans, we're not talking just about hardcore planning issues, land use, what should we do with the train, what should we do with the square. It is much more rich than that, because it includes other policy areas. It includes things such as education, health, or economic development, integration, etc. So this is a very relevant issue. Generally, I have to say that when we have participation, being it binding or not binding, being it top down, bottom up to down, most of the cases we're dealing with physical issues. We're dealing with issues related to territory, to land use, to things that happen in the ground in a solid way, in a physical way. It's less common to find demands on other issues. You might find them, of course, but they're very punctual and very micro. So it's very important that there is tools of participation regarding other policy areas, and allowing citizens to express their opinion, their claims, their complaints, etc. There would also be, in a regular basis, discussion of projects, of the strategies, of an actions. If we are talking about, more activities outside of these strategic planning, which are revised every year. So there would be a movement of different tools of participation, like the public hearing or workshops, or seminars and lectures, out of which most outcomes were delivered to participants and politicians. There are also, of course, information about projects and activities, which are more of a nature of just gaining transparency and putting information on the table. So what we have in Hamar is a rather interesting and I would say simple but apparently efficient system of participation, in which regularly the strategic planning is revised and it is decided, so there is strong participatory generally non-binding, but eventually binding mechanisms of participation. We also have in different policy areas, not only physical, this is very important, and we also have a system of tools for participation, for disseminating information, for discussing and argumenting issues related with the city through a range of different mechanisms of participation. And I think this is quite important. But who participates? And I think this is also important. Guy was telling me that most of the people that participate in the no, but I want the camera.
Okay.
Most of the people that participate in these meetings, in these public hearings or workshops, are generally the same people. So there will be the same stakeholders. This is, of course, like a kind of classic for in Western European environments. I don't think it has to be related to a specific character of Norwegians. Maybe some of these attitudes become more, I would say, intense in Norway, because Norway is a rich country. Norway has most of the necessities of people are covered. So we were finding out that most of the even mobilizations that take place, or claims or demands that take place, are of the NIMBY sort, which is basically this concept. NIMBY is like not in my backyard, which means that people only react when they have something close that is going to affect them, and they generally don't react when this other thing affects someone else. So this not in my backyard means that when there's a road which is going to be built and affects you somehow because of the landscape, the views, the increase in traffic, the accessibility to your area for people different like you than you, then you mobilize and you claim and you ask for things. But if people don't feel affected, it's less common that they might mobilize. This is a kind of state of the art of Western societies, of course, with exceptions. And I go back to this example, which is very interesting for me as a scholar, as an activist, as a person, which is the 15M, the indignated movement, the people that just occupied and made of public space places in the last few months, and more places in the world. Despite these, elements of hope, if you want to call it that, in general, people tend to participate only when it's strictly necessary, only when their interests are perceived to be affected or are really affected. It is hard to mobilize people if you want them to do something, if you want them to really participate or to join a workshop or something like that. So it has to have a lot of incentives. And I think I was discussing with Moki and I was discussing with Guy that this project in Hamar is especially rich or has a huge potential to both incorporate this space into the city, to turn it into a place, but also to, and this is Moki's main concern, to make of it an element of integration, of dynamization, of reflection about identity, about who we are, how we want to look at ourselves, and what is the role of our city, of our public space in our own identity building process. And I think this adds a new dimension which might not have been enoughly commented or mentioned before. We've so far talked a lot about participation in terms of people contributing to the design of the square, of the public space, people changing their attitudes towards the public space, and eventually turning it into a place through using it in different ways. Remember those different kinds of users that we defined in the beginning, which were people going to do something specific to a square, people drifting in the square, or people just that go there because they wanted to go, not because they were doing something else, but they wanted to go. But also, it is very important to think in the square as a living laboratory for social change or social dynamics in the city. In terms not only when Moki is talking about integration, she's not only talking about the different groups of foreigners or not, let's say, non-Norwegians that might use the square, which incidentally are the ones who hang out in the square, apparently, and I would like to know more about that, but also about the way in which the square might be used to make a collective reflection about who we are, how can this square change our lives, how can this square be part of our lives and add something to our lives, not only through the use of a physical space, but also through the use of through the exposure to interactions of different kinds to the ones we used to. I insist, I was very surprised when Moki was telling me, well, the guys that hang out in the square are basically foreigners, immigrants or asylum seekers, because there's probably three kinds of non-Norwegian residents in the city, which would be those immigrants who have been there for a while, or they're integrated, they have their documents, the green card or whatever, the permissions, or even the nationality, and they have the business. Then there would be a second group, which would be sorry if I don't express myself in English properly with this concept, those who were asylum seekers and have been granted asylum, so they have a specific status of political refugees. And then third group would be precisely asylum seekers, which they don't really know how long they're going to be there, whether they're going to be kicked out or allowed to stay, etc. And it is surprising for me that the square is mainly used by foreigners, by non-whites, because of course the differences, physical differences, are very important, very, very, visual. And we were discussing, okay, is this use of the square by these groups of people? It is because it's cultural, because Norwegians don't hang out and they just go into their homes or sometimes into bars. This use by minorities of the public space, it is because the public space hasn't got a good status, and it's perceived as a fringe, and it's not used by white Norwegians because it's not perceived as being in the city center, and it's something sort of in the fringes, and it's not appealing to them. Or it is because it's not used because there's a perception of let's say insecurity, or of people won't feel initially comfortable because other people are using it. Is it a matter of social class, in which also of course ethnic Barabuns go again into the equation? So let's try to think in terms of participation with these variables, which groups are keen to participate, what groups are really using the space and should be empowered or enhanced to participate in this process, and so on and so forth. Let me just, before finished, show you some very, very visual aspects of different uses of a square and different designs of squares in Madrid. This is a little square which has a lot of social life, markets, people playing all day round, literally from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 or 2 in the night. We spent a couple of days there shooting at the activity, and it was amazing. Sorry for the pixeling. And then we're turning into this. This would be a recently designed. Oh, sorry, I didn't show you the previous one because I was the camera. Sorry. There we go. This is the square with a lot of action, activity, and social life. This one, which is not far, would be the new design. Despite it's 2000 and it's funded with European Union funds, it is a wonderful flagstone made of granite, in which in summer here we can reach easily 43 degrees centigrade. So it is an oven, but it's hardly any trees, hardly any places to sit except in one little corner over there, and of course a chance to privatize it and to put all sorts of different activities in the middle that you need to pay for or to do. What else we have here? We have another. This is very recent. This is last year. This is one of the central squares in the city, Plaza de Callao. Again, if someone finds a place where to sit, I would buy you a beer wherever I met you, because there's no sittings, no seats, no facilities to sit, no furniture except a couple of kiosks for luxury and press and some lamp lights. There's nothing to sit. Now they have put, last time I think they put 4 chairs, not benches, but 4 chairs. So this is what we're looking at. Yeah, we're looking at. There's another square which was full of life, but was not very properly designed because it had a lot of different levels, a lot of different corners, and often had a lot of problems of security, of perception of security. There was a prostitution area very close with drug consuming, crack, kids, immigrant kids mainly. This is a Filipino kids are basically occupying and enjoying this public space. But the square was demolished and it was turned into this, which is again a flagstone, very, very warm in summer, with a little fountain here, that is some springs, but again only some benches in the sides, hardly any trees, but as the other ones here, very, very easy to clean and very easy to watch and to surveil. So it's for surveillance. Okay, so this would be today's work. Yes, I have 2 minutes left. Let me just have a look to if there's some other international. There's a lot of action going on in the chat. Guy is like the virtual superstar of the day, because of course there's a lot of questions, a lot of issues to be dealt with and asked to him. So we're really happy about this hard interaction, and hope to see you next Tuesday. And we would explain some strategies of participation and some ways of participation, and eventually relate them with what we would be thinking about doing in Hamar, in Stodole. Okay, so
if you want to comment something quickly.
No, I don't know.
We'll share the chat.
Okay, Francesco is just asking me if I want to talk about a little bit the chat, but it's really a lot of stuff going on. You want?
We will share tomorrow.
Okay, we will share the chat tomorrow. And Francesco, you want to say something?
No, it's okay.
No, okay. Okay, so we're closing the third session of the workshop, Public Space and People, into the Dream Hamar project by Ecosistema Urbano in the commune of Hamar. This is our third session. We would see you again Tuesday at 6 o'clock for the open session. The open session Tuesday open session, and the this seminar or this workshop session on Wednesdays. Last Wednesday on the at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7 Spanish time. And well, I think that's everything for today. We'll share with you the chat, which is getting very interesting, and I hope this has been useful for you in terms of both learning, sharing about participation, and also those who are interested in participating in the Hamar project with your own proposals. I hope this has been of some use for you. Okay, so bye bye and have a good week.